On this FANMAIL Friday, we're actually sharing the most realistic big money free agent that would possibly sign with our favorite team.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. It's a FANMAIL Friday, and we're talking about what you want to talk about, like a Nolan Schanuel potential trade, the kind of influence Kurt Suzuki will have over his coaching staff, and a question about the redeemability of Anthony Rendon. Before we talk about our favorite team, we want to thank our sponsor, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Happy Friday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Hey, we're talking Angels baseball with you Monday through Friday, having a great time discussing our favorite team and yours. Of course, it's our hope and desire that you'll leave here a more informed fan, a smarter baseball fan, and a smarter Angel fan. Mike, we had lots of smart fans in our mailbag this week. Let's go to our first question, which came from Vincent Santa Maria. He actually texted me a question because he's part of the Everydayer Club All Access. So he shot over his text message. Why don't you read that for us?
Santa Maria. I love that. If the Angels could only sign one big, realistic free agent, Bellinger, Okamoto, King, etc., which one should they sign and why? Why don't you start, Jon?
Yeah, Mike, if it's going to be somebody who's realistic, I got to go back to Zac Gallen. I know that we talked about him at the beginning of the week, and for the rumors that the Angels had been interested in him, it just seems to make sense. It's a guy who's been pretty consistent over his career, but also didn't have a great 2025. I think there's some easily correctable things there with Zac Gallen. But if I'm going to go realistic and it's a big free agent, then I think it's got to be Zac Gallen, because some of the other guys that we're talking about in terms of Bellinger or maybe even Michael King. Look, I want Kazuma Okamoto more than anything. I would love to see him over at third base. I think it's the right time. He's the right age. You could get him for 3 or 4 years. That solves third base for you. I'm just not confident that they would get that level of player or that tier of free agent. There's some trade options out there as well, but I think if I'm going to go realistic, I'm going to go with somebody who, has lived on this side of the country, played for Arizona. Maybe Anaheim isn't that big of a jump for him. He's 30. It would be a comfortable lifestyle living, on the West Coast, especially with all of the players living in the beach areas and the fancy places out on that side of Anaheim and Orange County. It just makes sense to me that Zac Gallen would be the most realistic big free agent. What say you?
Not to be repetitive, so I'm going to pick a different name, but maybe Michael King. He rises to the surface for me because he has been in San Diego, and he's not going to be somebody that's going to demand hundreds of millions of dollars, but he is somebody that I think the Angels could afford and could slot in at the top of this rotation and make this rotation better. I know they need some offense. I know they need some bats, but having another pitcher like a Michael King, I think really changes the way that they approach 2026, especially from the starting rotation, because you've now got 5 really quality guys that could go out there, eat some innings, and do it in a really effective way.
Okay, so then who is the unrealistic free agent that you'd want to see?
Bo Bichette. I think Bo Bichette is unrealistic, but Jon, I think that he would slot right in perfectly with Zach Neto and Nolan Schanuel and Logan O'Hoppe. I think he would be the veteran amongst the young guys, and his dad played in Anaheim. So why not come to Anaheim, Bo, and change the narrative? Come on, you can help us build a statue just for you outside of that stadium. We've got a new window opening up because Taylor Ward's picture is taken down. Why not just put Bo Bichette up there right now as incentive to get him to come to Anaheim?
Ooh, he'd look real good in red as
I think
well.
So.
And
we'll give him a lot of green.
It's not that cold in Anaheim. It's probably freezing in Toronto. So There you go. Come south of the border, the Canadian border. Come join us in the warm Southern California weather, my friend Bo Bichette. Yeah, same here, Mike. Unrealistic for me is Bo Bichette, but I would do that in a heartbeat. Alex Lamberts on YouTube said, what about a trade of Nolan Schanuel for Edward Cabrera? He's a starting pitcher from the Marlins. Then signing Ryan O'Hearn for 3 years to replace Schanuel. Now, in my opinion, Edward Cabrera would be a great trade target. So far, the Marlins are listening on offers for him. But Mike, unfortunately, I think it would take more than Nolan Schanuel to acquire him. I don't think it would be a one-for-one thing. Now, the Marlins, I've been listening to Jeremiah Geiger over on Locked On Marlins, does a great job over there, has been on the show before. They need a first baseman.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there are better options out there. Now that the Orioles have Pete Alonso, all of a sudden, Kobe Mayo becomes expendable. He's blocked, and he's been one of their top prospects. He even got some major league looks this past season. The Marlins and Orioles already made a swap in the past, and they were able to get Connor Norby, and he's been good for the Marlins. And the Orioles need pitching, so I think it lines up really well. However, Jeremiah did say that he thinks it would be more than a one-for-one swap of Cabrera for Kobe Mayo. He did say he'd like to see somebody more established as a major league starter, not someone that, has to live up to their prospect potential or, a project that needs to be worked on. And so in that sense, I think Nolan Schanuel fits that bill. I'm just not confident that Schanuel would get it done, or even if the Angels had a trade package to get it done. I do like the idea of trading him and then getting Ryan O'Hearn to play first base. Mike, let's move beyond the if and the whats and the shouldas and the couldas. Would you make this trade if Schanuel got you Edward Cabrera?
This is really hard because I really like Nolan Schanuel, and then I'm thinking about the team. If you take his bat out of the lineup, he's the kind of bat that you want in this lineup right now because he's going to spray the ball all over the place. But if you got Edward Cabrera for Nolan Schanuel straight up, I think you got to make that move. But then you've got to make a couple other moves, the Ryan O'Hearn move, or you got to go get somebody else to play first base or move somebody to first base and then fill that role somewhere else. Maybe Mike Trout suddenly wants to play first base, or maybe Logan O'Hoppe moves to first base. You got to fill that. The problem is the Angels offense currently really needs Nolan Schanuel in this lineup. We've talked about it on the show. When he was hurt at the end of 2025, the offense really fell apart. And when he came back, they started to come back because he's a guy that turns over the lineup. He's a guy that walks or will make contact. He's a guy that will make contact to move runners over and to get runners in. And so he's the type of bat that you really need in this lineup. So if you trade him for an Edward Cabrera, even though I'm not a huge fan because he's really on the downturn, at least last year, maybe you go and you sign Luis Arraez and you have him play at first base because he doesn't strike out a lot, although his bat speed and his in the zone numbers did not look good last year, but he still would be somebody that would probably be an equal, if not better trade or better signing for the Angels if you replaced Schanuel with him at first base and you got Edward Cabrera.
That's an option. I'm glad you brought him up because a lot of people have asked about Luis Arraez, and I've kind of answered it in comments and on our Discord channel, of course, for the Everydayer Club. To me, Mike, it makes me really nervous. All of his aging numbers are kind of on the decline. He reminds me of what David Fletcher became after hip surgery, where, hey, he'll get singles, but in between that, you got a guy who doesn't walk a lot. You got a guy who, is going to just kind of pop to shallow left or shallow right field. And you got to hope that it dinks and dunks into a gap for him to get on base.
He's the type of signing that Angel fans have been really frustrated with that the Angels have made in the last 10 years. The type of guy that is kind of past his good years, and they brought him in, and he would be really frustrating. He's not going to be the 290, 300 batting champion type of guy that he was. He's probably going to be at best, 280, 270 this season, which I know Angel fans are like, we'll take it, right? Because we didn't have that. And I get that. But think about what he was to what he is now and what he will become if you have to sign him to a longer term deal. His bat speed is really slow. The aging numbers just don't look good. And you don't know what it's going to be on the other side of that. If he's just going to be a slap hitter like a squid, right? Then that's going to be a really terrible signing. And you're going to have him for a little bit. Now, he may not strike out a lot, but he's certainly not going to produce the way that he had in the past. So it's pretty dangerous, right?
It's pretty crazy how, we were really excited about somebody like him a few years ago. And then
for sure,
all of a sudden it just was like, ooh, that's a quick decline there. All right. Last question for this segment. Bill on YouTube said, is Perry Minasian capable of making a number 1 or number 2 trade or acquisition that will actually help this team improve? I'm really tired of every transaction being with the Braves or for someone who doesn't seem to be able to make this team better. Mike, I'm going to address the second part, because when Bill said somebody who doesn't make this team better, one of the first things I looked at with Vaughn Grissom is what's his walk rate? What's his strikeout rate? And there were very few guys who were above league average in walks last year. It was Trout. It was Schanuel. It was Taylor Ward. It was Jorge Soler actually took a lot of walks, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that he can do if he ends up staying with this team in 2026. And so every guy that Perry has gotten on this team, and that goes for Grayson Rodriguez too. What's his walk rate? What's his strikeout rate? Is he putting guys on? Does he have a high whip, right? And so far, everything that he's acquired, even though it's not the flashiest and the most exciting, it puts dents into the low walk rate and the high strikeout rate that the Angels had. I understand they're not number 1 or number 2 guys. I think Grayson Rodriguez is going to be a stud, by the way, but that's just my opinion. But when it comes to somebody like Vaughn Grissom, like I said, the first thing I looked at was, all right, what does he do well? And does that put a dent into what the Angels did terribly last season? But Mike, is Perry capable of making a number 1 or number 2 trade or acquisition? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's operating under the budget constraints that Arte Moreno has given him. But we have to think back to what he's done in his 5-year tenure. I know that there's a lot of critique that he deserves, but remember, he did trade for Logan O'Hoppe. And before last season, Bill, probably you would be included in this. Everybody was like, dude, pillar. He's going to be the catcher of the future. He's the Benji Molina, right? He's going to be the guy that we can count on. Last year was a really terrible year, and he needs to bounce back. But he also, remember, traded for Carlos Estevez, and Carlos Estevez ended up being fantastic for the Angels. So some of his moves have really benefited this team. We're just in the what have you done for me lately, and we haven't been to the playoffs since 2014. So I get why there's a lot of frustration there. I get why we're wondering if Perry can actually make this team better. But he has incrementally brought in players each year that have been better than the players he brought in the season prior. The difference between him and other teams is that they don't just run with the mediocre and get better mediocre players. They go from mediocre to somebody really good, and that's why they're able to improve. Obviously, Perry's operating with the direction of Arte Moreno, and I wonder if he's incapable of doing that because of the overlord that is Arte Moreno, not because he can't find somebody or won't be able to offer that contract. And so he has to work within the puppet master's restraints and bring in players that can potentially be good and grow in the Anaheim organization.
Okay, really quick. You just made me think of something. In Artie's snow globe, his playground, right? If you have a success rate, or I should say, what's a good success rate on hitting on a guy like Carlos Estevez? Because when Robert Suarez signed with the Mets yesterday, I saw the top 5 saves leaders over the last couple of years, and Carlos Estevez is among them.
Yeah.
Right. And he wasn't a closer before he came to the Angels, and the Angels identified something in him and wanted to make him a closer. So that to me is a success. And obviously Perry has had his unsuccesses, his non-successes, but also under the umbrella of Artie, I mean, what percentage, like 40, 50% success rate, like is successful in the Artie realm? What do you think?
I think from Artie's perspective, none of it's successful because they haven't won. Yeah. I think he looks at it as, I signed Anthony Rendon. We haven't won. Why not? Why didn't we win? And I think that that's how he sees his baseball team. I think from Perry's perspective, there is a 40%, 50%, 60% success rate that we as fans can go, well, we're seeing incremental growth. We're seeing good decisions amongst some of the nonsensical decisions or silly decisions or bargain bin decisions. That's why he's got to do more this offseason to improve this team. But I think that we could look at Alek Manoah, and I think we could look at the Grayson Rodriguez trade and go, yeah, I see what he's trying to do there. And that does make this team better. There's a lot that we're hoping for, but those two guys make this team better. And if they click, if they are 60% of what they were before they got hurt, John, that's better than Tyler Anderson and Kyle Hendricks, which makes this team better. So as fans, I think that that's probably a better question for us to evaluate as we watch Perry Minasian put this team together, rather than what Arte Moreno thinks or what Arte Moreno sees.
I'm going to geek out at some point and kind of break down everything that Perry's done and put a number to it. I think that would be really fun. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, more Fan Mail Friday questions, including how is Kurt Suzuki going to handle his role with the Angels and the coaching staff that he has? And is Anthony Rendon redeemable? We're going to talk about all of that coming right up.
How about the World Cup coming back to North America for the first time since 1994? It doesn't feel like it's been that long. But let's be honest, getting tickets for that probably going to be difficult because it has been that long. That's why you need the Game Time app. With Game Time, you can track prices in real time. You can get alerts with great seats when they open up, and you can buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. Plus, puts the power back in your hands where it belongs, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Just pull up the app. The layout makes it so simple to scroll through, pick a game, tap a section. You can have your tickets locked in and locked on within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. And then the seat view feature, it's a game changer. It's going to let you see where you're sitting, what the view actually looks like. So you're not going to be surprised by the big giant pole that's right in front of you. You don't want that. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the app, make an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Game Time.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the country. We're grateful that you're here. Now, we've got something very exciting for you, for everybody that we call an everydayer. If you consider yourself an everydayer, there's a way for you to take it to the next level. You can go ad-free. Get the show ad-free wherever you listen to podcasts. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Angels with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and much more for just $5 a month or $50 for the year. Or take it to the next level, take it up a notch, go all access. You'll get one-on-one text access with me. Of course, we've already had some great Fan Mail Friday questions from the text, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount on the Locked On merch store. So go to LockedOnAngels.com. I'm sorry, LockedOnAngels.supercast.com, or check the link in the episode description to learn more and become part of the Everydayer Club.
All Access member Robert Amberg texted you and asked this question. It seems they have hired a lot more coaches for the coming season. Is it up to Kurt Suzuki to allocate coaches, duties, and assignments? And that's his first question. Second question, do they need to avoid getting in each other's way? Love that question. John, why don't you tackle the first one? Is it up to Kurt Suzuki to allocate coaches, duties, and assignments?
I think if I'm a first-year manager, that's something I would want to do. And I think it's going to fall under Kurt Suzuki's purview, if you will, to make sure that nobody's stepping on top of each other in terms of what their roles are supposed to be within this organization and as part of the coaching staff. Look, I think a lot of what happened last year was, I don't know, too many guys doing too many different things. And it didn't get better when, Ray Montgomery had to become the manager and Ryan Goins was no longer the infield coach. He was the bench coach, right? And so I think that had a major impact on everything that was going on. And then you heard things about like, well, Ryan Goins is the infield coach, but Ron's out there too. And Ron's part of that. And I could easily see Kurt Suzuki being part of like the catching conversation, of course, but they also hired Max Stassi to be part of the coaching staff. And so that's got to be his job. You think about Brady Anderson and John Mabry, and then they brought in a third part of the hitting coaching staff. That feels like a lot. And I think that's kind of where this question is coming from regarding Robert's question. And like you said earlier this week, Mike, I think if you have, Brady Anderson and John Mabry, like you're going to have to divvy up, maybe Anderson is philosophically in charge, and then Mabry is going to be the one to execute that philosophy. And then Kurt just kind of has to stay out of it, right? Unless he's seeing something within his lineup going, hey, why are we trying to why are we trying to swing for the fences every time we're up there? Right. And hopefully that's not the case next season. I don't think that's going to be the case next season. And I think Curt is going to have a little more autonomy in what this team looks like and plays like on the field. And so, yeah, they need to avoid getting in each other's way. I think that being a first-time manager, I don't know, you want to hire guys that you can trust and then put your hands up and say, all right, go do your job, right? I mean, you're in charge of an organization. How do you feel about that?
You got to cast the vision. Like, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what I need you to do. Here's the specific thing that I need you to do. If I'm Curt Suzuki, I'm given very specific job descriptions to each of my coaches, and I'm putting metrics in the job description. I'm putting like, they're going to grow by 10%, or they're going to strike out less than this percentage this year. This particular player, or our hitting staff, or our pitching staff is going to throw this percentage of strikeouts. I would put that in the job description. And then Curt's job after that is to let his coaches coach. I think that that's been the biggest issue for the Angels, is that everybody wants to be in there one-on-one, getting a Coke with everybody, right? And eating a burrito and becoming best friends. Curt's job should be to let his coaches coach. Here's the vision. Here's what I need you to do. And then first check in on the coaches and also check in on the players. And his question needs to be, how you doing? What are you working on? How can I help? That should be the three questions that he should be asking his coaching staff and his players. And then dive in when he sees it falling apart. Dive in. Or if he sees like it's not going well or the communication is bad, that's where he needs to step in. He's the culture setter. He's the strategy guy. He's the vision caster. And that's going to be something that I think Curt's going to have to learn how to do. And I think John Gibbons can help him do that because John Gibbons has been on the bench before. Curt has not. Feels like Curt is more of a one-on-one, let's get a coffee kind of guy. That's got to pivot if this team is going to be successful and if the coaching staff is actually going to be able to do their job and do their job well.
I also think that's going to be to his advantage too, if he's getting insight into the players and he can approach Brady Anderson and say, hey, Logan O'Hoppe's feeling this way about his stance at the plate and that kind of thing, just to have a little more insight into what the players are struggling with and dealing with. We had a voicemail from, I think it was after Thanksgiving, and it's been sitting in our voicemail box. So apologies to Colby in Santa Ana.
Hey, Mike and John, this is Colby from Santa Ana. I'm an everyday listener. And I just wanted to comment on Logan O'Hoppe real quick. I loved what Curt Suzuki had to say about him at the winter meetings, how he's special, and they want to kind of work with him to get things right. But I'm also worried, he said that one of his issues last year was having too many voices in his head with all the coaches and stuff. And now we have Curt Suzuki, who is a former catcher. We have Max Stassi, who is a former catcher and is now the catching coach. Still have Travis d'Arnaud there on the team. And with all these new hitting coaches, is this going to be another year of overload for him? Is he going to try to take on too much by, listening to all these different voices and stuff? So let me know what you think, and hope you guys are doing well. Bye.
Colby in Santa Ana, thanks for your voicemail, my friend, and thanks for your patience as we got to that for Fan Mail Friday. Mike, kind of in the same vein as Robert's question about, too many voices, too many coaches, that sort of thing. I think at the end of the day, I think the Angels thought they had a really good idea in bringing in some really expert coaches, catching coach, bullpen coach who was a catcher, right? And I think that they thought, hey, let's get a lot of experienced people in here to work these things out. Maybe it was a little bit of overkill, and is there a risk that there's going to be overkill between Suzuki and Stassi, especially when it comes to like Logan O'Hoppe? What do you think?
Well, Logan has said, and we shared this on the show this week, Logan has said he's going to be, quote unquote, true to who he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to stop being Randy Orton and listen to the voices, and he's going to be...
It's so dumb because I was going to say that too. He hears voices in his head, right?
He's going to be himself, and he's going to allow himself on and off the field to be what he is supposed to be, what he's designed to be. I think that the Angels getting a whole new coaching staff was a sign that they admit that they messed things up last year. And this isn't about necessarily the coaching strategy. This is about the coaching ego. Who they brought in last year might have been guys that are like, no, you got to do it like this. This is how you approach it. You know what I mean? And they come in with all sorts of arrogance. But there's a difference between strategy and ego. I think that this new staff, based off of what we've learned so far and kind of being fresh to the game, like Brady Anderson, are going to come in going, hey, what can I do to help you to be better? Here's some thoughts that I already have, and I want to work with you on this. Sounds like Max Stassi is going to be the guy that directly connects with Logan O'Hoppe, and that's it. I know Dom Chidi is there and other guys are there, but it's going to be Stassi, and I'm sure Kurt Suzuki will work with him as well. There'll be hitting coaches on that side as well. But I think that what they brought in is guys who are going to work together, guys who have the same strategy, and not guys who are like, you're not listening to John, are you? Like Mike really has the good direction. That's honestly, that's the vibe that I received from these coaches last year, is that they came in going, forget that, put your glove this way instead of that way, put your knee down instead of up. I get that they probably have some great philosophy and some great tools, but it came with a whole lot of ego and not any sort of humility.
Yeah. I also think that you have a good combination of new voices and experienced voices. And I think together, with somebody like Brady Anderson, who hasn't been a hitting coach, that can make you a little bit nervous. But then you see the support staff that he has. Yeah. You got Kurt Suzuki, who's a brand new manager. But then you see, he's got John Gibbons, who was a very successful manager, as his bench coach. I think that there's a good combination of the kinds of people they brought into this coaching staff. And then you got Mike Maddox, right? And so I think that I think it's a good combination of new and old that's going to bring a fresh voice to the team this year.
NFL Sundays move really fast. One big play, suddenly everything feels so different. That's why you need FanDuel. It makes live betting so exciting on FanDuel. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Whatever the drive might be, or the momentum swing, or whatever the highlight might be, live betting is best when the game starts to shift, and you can use FanDuel to do that. It lets you jump in on every moment, and it keeps you locked in on every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of all the action this NFL season, visit FanDuel.com, place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Couple more questions on FanMail Friday, including one on YouTube from Stafford's Discount Carpets. And I love it because Jason has leaned into it. And apparently Stafford's is local. So there you go. He said, hey guys, Stafford's Discount Carpets here. I'm curious about your thoughts regarding acquiring players with a qualifying offer or trading prospects for a player via trade. A decent player could clear the farm when a qualifying player only sacrifices a second rounder. It seems that for a good player, losing a draft pick is the way. Thanks, Jason Stafford from Stafford's Discount Carpet. So I think the big question here is, Mike, is it worth trading somebody and having to give up your Nelson Radas and those players, those kinds of players, or sign a guy with a qualifying offer and not give up a second round pick that you don't even know who you're getting or who he's going to be, right? What do you think is the balance there?
I'm signing a guy and giving up that second round pick, because I think I'd love to see, if I'm in the Angels organization, I would love to see some of these guys make it to the major league level, because they look like promising prospects. I know that there's always questions. I get that, but there's never been a better time in the Angels farm system in the last 10 to 12 years than right now. I get that their ranking is terrible, but a part of those rankings, my opinion, are just garbage. And so I think that what we have with the Angels is we've got some young guys that are ready to go. The other issue with the Angels is that they really move them up fast. It hasn't been an issue for some of their first round picks, but it has been for some of their later round picks. So that's why I wouldn't get rid of a Nelson Rada, or I wouldn't get rid of a Caden Dana, because these guys are top prospects. I know Rada wasn't drafted. He was a free agent, not
international free agent.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. International free agent. But ultimately, John, they've done really well in the first round. They haven't done so well in the second, third, fourth round, right? And so that's why if I'm the Angels, I'm signing a guy, giving up the qualifying offer and missing out on the second round pick, because I haven't hit on a second round pick in a while.
Yeah, and they also got number 12 in the draft as of Wednesday because they had the draft lottery. The Angels were ineligible for the draft lottery since they've picked in the top 10 the last couple of years. I know. Like, you're trying to do competitive balance, and it's happening to all the wrong teams. So There you go. We got one more voicemail. This comes from Cameron. Let's go to that right now.
Hey, my name's Cameron from Orlando, Florida. Big fan of the show, guys. I think you do a great job. You're my daily commute. Listen to work every day. I just had a random question as I've been listening to you guys preparing for next season. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are with Anthony Rendon. I just had this random thought. I was wondering, is there anything that guy could do to be redeemable in your eyes or in the eyes of Angels fans? Like, if he just put up a 330, 35 homer, 110 RBI season, which is obviously I don't think it'll happen, but like if it did, is that something that considers him like redeemable? If he helps us make a big deep push into the playoffs or whatever, like I'm just curious what you guys' thoughts are. Just kind of a random question, but just thought who better to ask than the experts over here. So anyway, guys, appreciate the show. Thank you for all you guys do, and look forward to hearing from you.
Cameron in Orlando, Florida. Hope that Cameron was able to see some like players or at least some of the media from the winter meetings this week. That's kind of cool. He's down that direction. Mike, is Rendon redeemable or redeemable if he has a monster season in this last year?
I would say winning cures all issues. Yeah. And so if the Angels win and Rendon is a part of that, sure, I'm going to be in, right? It'll be with maybe biting my tongue in some of those ways. I just think that you have to get there. This Angels organization is not a place that you should send somebody who needs redemption to be redeemed, right? You think about years past when the Patriots and the NFL were really good. You could send a Randy Moss there, and he was fantastic because they had a culture that was set. You could put Dennis Rodman on the Bulls, and they can win 3 championships in a row because they've got Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, right? But on the Angels, you're going to have to go through all of that process to even have him on the roster, and then you got to hold him accountable. And I just don't think the Angels have that culture. I mean, they're popping pimples on Mike Trout's back. Like, it's not healthy there, right? And so there's a lot that they're going to have to work through. So if he's able to get there and he's able to have a decent season and it helps the Angels win, yeah, absolutely. I'm applauding that, and I'm excited about that. I'm also excited that it would be his last year and don't bring him back. But I just don't think that he'd even get there because this Angel organization and the culture of this organization doesn't feel like a culture that has the ability or the capability of any kind of redemption.
And at this point, too, doesn't even sound like he's going to be on the field again this year. So these last 2 years of his contract have been a wash, and that's saying a lot considering most of his contract has been a wash. And the problem is, I'll let you talk in a second, but like the problem is that there was a period of time where when he was injured, I mean, maybe it was our first year of Locked On Angels where it was like, yeah, but when he's on the field, here's what he does, and here's what he does well, and here's how he helps the lineup. And that went away too, didn't it?
Yeah. But you would cheer him on if the Angels got to the playoffs and Anthony Rendon had a halfway decent season, right?
Sure.
You would cheer him on. Yeah. You wouldn't be angry, upset. And that's the thing. Like, if the guy does his job, that's all we're asking for. We're just asking for him to do his job. Like, go out there and play and play with some heart and play with some passion and put up halfway decent number. Hit a freaking home run, for God's sakes, right? Like, this guy can't even hit a home run anymore. And that's what's really frustrating. And then he's got all these off the field antics that just add to it. If he was able to play and he got out there to play and somehow put up a 240 batting average with 15 home runs and 55 RBIs and played a decent third base, and the Angels are the third wild card and they get to the playoffs, I'm applauding him because he helped our team get to where they haven't been since 2014.
Yeah. I think if we're going to take the energy for is somebody redeemable, I want to apply that to Mike Trout. And I know that he, in my eyes, as a fan, I don't think he needs to be redeemed. I think that he has shown remorse for not being on the field and his regret for not being able to be out there. Right. So he's at least expressed remorse. And I think that's where the redeem part comes in, is Rendon needs to be redeemed because he's been a jerk and he doesn't care. And at this point, like, He's over it. Angel fans are over it. So if anybody's going to have a monster season, like Cameron was talking about, like hypothetically, I'd love to see that energy come from Mike Trout. I would love to see him be Trout-like or Trout-esque in the next season, because I think that would be a really awesome thing. It would take the Angels a really long way if he can be 75% of the guy that he used to be with the Angels.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Angels with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and so much more, all for $5 a month or $50 a year, or go all access for $15 a month. You're going to get one-on-one text access with Jon. You heard a few of our Everydayers did that already. It's how they got questions in today. All access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Plus, Jon will flip his hair for you. Go to LockedOnAngelsSupercast.com or check the link in the episode description for more.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We're always continuing the conversation over there, especially when breaking news happens regarding our Angels and then just baseball in general. I think that it's always a lot of fun to just talk about what's going on around the league. Mike, when we come back on Monday, what do we have on deck?
Well, we got a list of players that are likely to sign with the Angels. Not superstars, not big money guys, but pitchers and hitters that are likely to sign with the Angels. We're going to share why they would be likely to sign with the Angels and how they would help our favorite team on Monday on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. We hope you have a great weekend. Until then, my name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
All right, all you sickos who love this team and all the everydayers who love to watch and listen, have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
I hear voices in my head. They understand.